Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're zeroing in on some key stories from the New York Times.
Right. The idea is to give you, our listener, a clearer picture of what's important right now without you having to wade through everything.
Exactly. We've looked at the news coverage from Tuesday, May 6th, and we're going to unpack some really diverse topics, politics, science, you name it.
And our goal isn't just to list headlines. We want to dig into the context, maybe connect some dots, and really highlight what stands out.
Okay, so let's kick off with something the New York Times flagged, a shift in how President Trump's sons, Donald Jr. and Eric, are handling their business ventures. Seems different this time around.
Yeah, it really does. During the first term, there was this stated effort to hold back on new international deals, concerns about conflicts of interest, mostly.
But now...
Now the Times suggests it's pretty much full steam ahead, a very different approach.
Right, like Donald Trump Jr.'s Trump Business Vision 2025 tour. He's been in Hungary, Romania, Serbia, Bulgaria.
And not just visiting, but actually meeting with government leaders in those places.
And he apparently spoke quite openly about his, quote, love for Dubai and the Gulf region. What do you make of that renewed international focus?
Well, looking at those specific countries, you might think it's about tapping into certain markets or, building ties with nations that have specific economic interests. And the Gulf focus, well, that clearly points towards regions with major investment possibilities.
And Eric Trump has also mentioned he was involved while his father was president, and now he's reportedly active in the Middle East, too.
That's right. The report mentions a huge $2 billion cryptocurrency investment.
$2 billion, wow.
Yeah, and real estate deals, too, a luxury hotel, I think, in Dubai, and a golf course in Qatar.
And the Times notes direct involvement by foreign governments in some deals. That seems significant.
It definitely raises eyebrows. How should we interpret that level of government interaction?
Well, the White House position, as reported, is that it's ethically okay because the sons are running the businesses. But President Trump's own financial disclosures show he still benefits financially from a lot of these projects. So does that separation really resolve the underlying questions?
It brings us right back to those tricky conflict of interest discussions, doesn't it? We've seen this sort of thing before. Relatives of presidents facing scrutiny.
Like Hunter Biden or Jimmy Carter's brother, George W. Bush's brothers?
Exactly. But the key difference flagged here is the former president's personal, ongoing financial stake in these ventures.
Yeah, the Times quoted a presidential historian who basically said, concerning these potential conflicts, there's nothing like it. There is just nothing like it.
That's quite a strong statement. It really frames it as unprecedented.
And it underlines the unique sort of challenge these activities present compared to past instances.
And these deals aren't just overseas, are they?
No, back home in Washington, D.C., Donald Trump Jr.'s setting up a private club in Georgetown. It's called Executive Branch.
Executive Branch?
Yeah. Membership is reportedly $500,000. Apparently, many slots are sold already, and they expect to open this summer. He denies he's trading on his father's name, though.
Well, with that name, that location, and that price tag, it certainly makes you wonder, doesn't it? It suggests a very specific, maybe influential clientele.
Okay, let's shift gears. Some updates involving the Trump administration itself. There were comments from the former president about due process in an NBC interview that caught attention.
Yes, that was striking. His apparent uncertainty about whether due process, Fifth Amendment stuff applies to everyone in the U.S.
Including non-citizens?
Right. His worry seemed to be that applying it universally would slow down mass deportations.
He actually mentioned the potential for 1 million or 2 million or 3 million trials. And when the interviewer asked directly if, as president, he needs to uphold the Constitution, his answer was, quote, I don't know.
Which is, well, quite a thing for a former president to say.
What are the implications of that kind of statement about constitutional basics?
It really raises fundamental questions about his view on the rule of law, which is pretty central to the whole U.S. system.
Then there was another directive. President Trump instructing officials to renovate and reopen Alcatraz.
Alcatraz. As a maximum security prison.
For violent criminals, yes.
Yeah.
Seems a bit out of the blue.
I mean, it's been closed since the 60s, right? And considering the talk of Justice Department budget cuts, you have to wonder about the feasibility.
What kind of challenges would reopening it involve?
Oh, huge ones.
Okay.
Structurally, making sure it's sound after all this time, modernizing security on an island, The cost alone would likely be massive, especially with those budget pressures.
Okay, and on a different domestic front, something with more immediate impact for many, the end of pandemic-era student loan relief.
Yes, forced collections are restarting for about 5 million people who were in default.
And consequences sound quite severe.
They could be. The report mentions withheld tax refunds starting potentially next month, seizure of Social Security benefits, and eventually garnishing paychecks.
That's going to put a real strain on people already struggling with that debt.
Absolutely. It's a major policy change. And the economic fallout for those individuals could be significant.
Now, turning to a really difficult international situation, Gaza. The New York Times is reporting it's been over 60 days since Israel effectively stopped all humanitarian aid from entering.
A complete halt. Food, fuel, medicine, everything.
And aid groups are sounding the alarm about catastrophic conditions. Israel's condition for letting aid back in is the release of hostages held by Hamas.
Which makes the humanitarian response incredibly complicated, ethically speaking.
How so?
Well, humanitarian principles generally say aid should be based purely on need, tying it to political conditions like hostage releases. It can really hamper the ability to reach people who are suffering.
And the suffering sounds immense. There was testimony from a Gazan man, his family eating just once a day.
Burning shoes for fuel because there's no cooking gas.
Yes. And reports of skeletal children, the impact on medical care, burn victims not getting enough nutrition to heal. It's horrific.
The long-term health effects of that kind of malnutrition, especially for kids, are just devastating. Physical development, cognitive development, weakened immune systems, it's awful.
Now, Israeli authorities apparently have a different narrative. They suggested enough supplies got in during a previous ceasefire.
And they've accused Hamas of hoarding aid, preventing it from reaching civilians.
So how do aid groups respond to that?
Well, the groups on the ground paint a very different picture. They say supplies are simply gone, exhausted.
And they can't get to what might be left.
Exactly. They talk about warehouses being inaccessible because of Israeli evacuation orders or declared no-go zones, reportedly affecting something like 70% of the territory. Makes distribution incredibly hard.
It just highlights the immense difficulty and the conflicting stories involved in trying to deliver aid in a war zone.
Access and security are huge obstacles.
Okay, let's shift focus again. Back in the U.S., legal proceedings involving Sean Combs' Diddy Puff Daddy have started in Manhattan.
Right. Jury selection is underway for that sex trafficking and racketeering case.
Racketeering. What does that mean here exactly?
Basically, it alleges organized criminal activity. Prosecutors are arguing there was a pattern of illegal acts, including sex trafficking run as part of an ongoing criminal enterprise led by Combs.
The specific allegations are really serious. Prosecutors claim he used employees for years to set up drug-fueled gatherings, for assaults on women, allegations of bribing witnesses, even hiding victims until injuries healed.
And they're pushing for that criminal enterprise charge, which could mean life in prison if he's convicted.
He's pleaded not guilty, of course. His lawyers say any encounters were consensual.
It's also worth noting he's been held in pre-trial detention since September.
Why so long before the trial?
Well, that usually signals the court has serious concerns. Could be flight risk, or in this case, worries about potential witness intimidation or obstructing justice. It shows how seriously the court is taking these charges.
Okay, let's move to technology. There's a sort of paradoxical development with AI reasoning systems like ChatGPT and others.
Yeah, it's quite interesting. These tools have gotten much better at certain things like complex math problems. But they seem to be making more basic factual mistakes, more hallucinations, as they call them.
Even though they're supposed to be more advanced reasoning systems.
Exactly. These systems try to break down problems step by step, sort of like human reasoning. But somehow, this seems to be leading to more factual errors on simple questions.
The example given was an AI suggesting a Philadelphia marathon when asked about races on the West Coast.
Right. Just fundamentally wrong. And apparently it's not just one model. It's happening across systems from Google, DeepSeek, OpenAI.
So why? What's the theory?
The researchers suspect that the step-by-step process itself might be the issue. Each small step could introduce a tiny error.
And those errors add up.
They could compound, exactly, leading to a final answer that's way off base. It's a really fascinating wrinkle in AI development.
And finally, a story that sounds almost like science fiction, but it's real. A potential breakthrough toward a universal snake antivenom.
Oh, this is an amazing story, and much of the credit goes to one man in Wisconsin, Tim Fried.
What did he do? It sounds pretty extreme.
It really was. For almost 20 years, he collected venomous snakes and deliberately let them bite him or injected himself with their venom. Hundreds of times.
Why on earth would someone do that? The side effects must have been horrendous.
They were blackouts, severe allergic reactions, anaphylactic shock, even falling into a coma at one point. It was incredibly dangerous.
But his goal?
His goal was to build up immunity in his own body, hoping his blood could help create a universal antivenom to save lives worldwide.
And has it worked?
Remarkably, yes, it seems so. Scientists studied his blood and found antibodies that can neutralize the venom from a whole range of deadly snakes, cobras, mambas, others.
That's incredible, the potential impact.
It's huge. Snake bites kill an estimated 120,000 people globally every year. This could be a genuine game changer.
Where's the research now?
They've successfully protected mice from lethal doses of venom using these antibodies. The next big step is testing it in the real world on dogs that have actually been bitten by snakes in vet clinics in Australia.
An extraordinary story of personal risk for potential global benefit.
Truly remarkable.
So, wrapping up this deep dive, it's clear we've covered a lot of ground. International business dealings, constitutional questions, a major humanitarian crisis, legal battles, AI's weird turns, and potentially life-saving science.
Yeah, it really shows how interconnected things are, doesn't it? And how fast things are changing in so many different areas. It underlines why just scanning headlines often isn't enough.
Absolutely. And it leaves us with something to think about. Given all this increasing complexity, whether it's global business entanglements or the power of AI, how much more important does critical thinking become? And maybe what's the responsibility for individuals, but also for institutions, to push for transparency and ethical considerations as we navigate all these rapid changes? Something to mull over.